Welcome to episode 28 of Rail Talk. My name is Joe Bianca. I'm an ownership advisor at West Point Thoroughbreds. And Jen, I'm so happy to have our intrepid producer, Patty Wolf, back. Listen, people don't realize this, but Patty inspires lives all around the country. With every appearance on Rail Talk, every music video vixen appearance, Patty is a trendsetter for decades to come.
Wow, I can't top that, Joe Bianca. Jonathan Green, general manager of DJ Stable. I think I'm just going to sit back and let this be the Patty Wolf show.
Yeah, well, that's what she wants eventually. That's what'll happen. She'll subsume us all. Rail Talk is sponsored by Fasig-Tipton. Bidding for the Fasig-Tipton February digital sale is now open. Go online, check out all those horses, all the pedigree info, all the videos, all the past performances, because you can get a horse and turn them around really quickly and win some big races on the racetrack a week, maybe 2 weeks later on the track. And we saw that over the weekend at Fairgrounds. John, there was a horse that came out of the Lotharbach dispersal that ran huge, right?
It was the Lotharbach dispersal. You're exactly right, Joe. Minnesota Ready, who was hip one in the program and hip one in your hearts, was a $380,000 purchase. So first of all, you can get, for a ready-made horse, you can get $300, $350, almost $400,000 for the horse. And then a week later, literally like the check probably didn't even, the ink on the check didn't even dry yet. They put the horse in the Colonel Power. It came off the turf and he won, not just won, he won impressively by over 3 lengths. And Joe, he ran a lifetime best 102 buyer. So to me, that is the ultimate, like I'm buying a horse and running it right back and getting a return on investment. They basically got $60,000 a week after they bought the horse. And Minnesota Ready is still proving himself as one of the top sprinters here in the country. So, Fasig-Tipton had a lot of good horses out of the Lotharbach. I think this is the first of many that are coming out of that sale. I'm actually monitoring the digital sale right now and bidding on a couple of horses with the hopes of replicating that pattern of Minnesota Ready.
Okay. All right. Keep us posted on that. Fasig also on the website has a section now dedicated to their selected yearlings. So you can go check out the more info on the July sale, the Saratoga sale, the New York bred yearling sale, which you can nominate 4 horses for right now. But up until then, we got, like I said, the digital sales every single month. And yeah, you want to, there's a lot of projection in sales, whether they're yearlings or 2-year-olds, no projection in getting a horse like Minnesota Ready, turning them around and winning a big race like that. There's plenty of other opportunities like that in those catalogs. All right, so it was a messy weekend in terms of weather on the racetrack, at Fairgrounds, at Gulfstream, at Tampa. I have a little bee in my bonnet about one of the races at Gulfstream. But the big 3-year-old action, the big stakes action of the weekend was Saturday in New Orleans at Fairgrounds, highlighted by the Risen Star Stakes. As far as I know, it's the first 1 1/8 prep this year for 3-year-olds. And it was won by Sierra Leone, who's a Chad Brown trained horse, $1 million plus son of gun runner, making his 3rd career start. And he came from way out of the clouds to run down Track Phantom, who had a very easy lead in that race. And I think that's kind of a little bit of a demerit to him that he wasn't able to finish that race off. But Sierra Leone is very exciting. I always question whether or not these horses are really meant for Derby success, because it takes a lot. It takes a real pace meltdown to be that deep of a closer and win the Kentucky Derby. You think of a horse like Monarchos or Mind That Bird, like they really got to be suicidal up front for you to be able to make up that kind of ground and pass that many horses. But it really was a really dazzling performance on a complete mess of a racetrack. I have a lot of respect for horses, jockeys too, but horses who were able to dig through that mud and keep trying, because it's a tiring surface. John, what was your impression of Sierra Leone on Saturday?
Well, it's ironic that you said that he came from the clouds, because there was a lot of things coming from the clouds, whether it was Sierra Leone or rain or sleet or dogs and cats living together. I mean, it was just a slop fest at the fairgrounds. And I think the powers that be that own and train Sierra Leone, that's the Magner Smith Group and Chad Brown, respectively. I think they were trying to get the horse to be a little closer because they put blinkers on him for the first time. And my guess is that they probably said to Tyler Gaffalione, hey, at the break, if the speed wants to go, let him go. But I want you to be closer than 12 lengths like you were, for the Remsen. And it didn't play out that way. Now, for him, it was probably better that it didn't play out that way, because he was able to nail Track Phantom at the end of the race. But, to me, Joe, I don't know when you have a surface like this. I don't know if it answers as many questions as it should, based on the winner in the second place and Catching Freedom, who finished third. I just don't know if it answered any questions yet, because it's such an unusual situation where not only was it raining and it was a wind, but it was also like a night race practically. I mean, I think they ran the race at the equivalent of like 7:30 our time, and it was dark. So I don't know if that had anything to do with with what was going on, but for all intents and purposes, it was Track Phantom's race to win. The horse was in front, well in hand. Rosario was doing a great job. And I was actually surprised that he got caught at the end, because I really thought that it was setting up for him perfectly. I think it was a good, solid field, like we talked about before the race. I think that you're going to see, I think they announced that Sierra Leone is going to go to Keeneland to run in the bluegrass, which makes sense, from a timing standpoint. I think also that they were trying to, now that they've proven themselves that they can run Sierra Leone outside of Aqueduct, that he can handle different surfaces, that they're probably going to want to try to keep him closer to Louisville for those upcoming races. But, again, Joe, we talk all the time about, do 7-figure yearling purchases ever turn out? And here was a horse that was sold for $2.3 million. Guess where? Fasig-Tipton, that's right, for $2.3 million. And already, the horse is showing that he's going to be a stallion, prospect, and rightfully so. Incidentally, our friends over at Arian Pedigrees sent us a quick note. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but Sierra Leone is a gun runner out of a Malibu Moon mare. Say that 10 times fast. And that cross has occurred 8 times for horses of racing age. 4 of those progeny are graded stake winners. Wow. How's that for a match?
Shout out to the sponsor, Arian Pedigrees, for that nugget. And yeah, I mean, Malibu Moon is he's one of the coolest stallions of all time. Horse that did nothing on the racetrack, basically was brilliant, but got hurt early and turned into a great sire and a great broodmare sire. I if you cashed Sierra Leone on Saturday and you didn't cash him the time before, I'm happy for you, because if you go back and watch the Remsen, that was one of the worst beats you could ever take. The horse looked like gin at the 16th pole. He's going to win by open legs, right? And somehow the other horse comes back and tags him on the wire. That was a horrendous beat. So I hope you got the get back on Saturday. It wasn't a huge price, but right. Our horse was, I think, much the best. I did mention the weather, and that was a story this weekend. And I just want to play this video real quick. So we had a horse, West Point had a horse running on Saturday, on Sunday in the 6th race at Gulfstream Park, named Misenchanted. And she's the one, she popped out to the front, went too fast, and then backed up early. And it was run in a driving monsoon. And it's one of those races you could barely see anything until they came out of the fog, in the last 1/8 of a mile. And I just wonder, how safe is it to be running these kind of races in those kind of conditions? I always, I think that, Naira and at Saratoga has gotten a lot of grief for canceling a lot of races and moving a lot of races off the turf. But I think, especially in this day and age, you have to exercise the utmost caution when it comes to these things. And I don't know, that it was one of those races where I went from rooting for her to win to being dude, just come back in one piece and exactly. Make sure she crossed the wire and everything. I mean, John, what's your feeling on that? It seemed to me there was no reason they couldn't either have delayed the race or canceled the rest of the card, because it was an absolute mess. That was like Wizard of Oz type shit. Right. And they ran the race through it. I didn't feel great about that. What do you think?
Yeah, it was one of those days, Joe, where you actually see the horses when they're running, that they have their heads bowed down because they don't want to get mud and rain in their faces. That's how egregious the weather was at that point. I think management for the racetracks are in a bad spot when it comes to last minute cancellations. I know from a safety standpoint, as an owner, you want to make sure your horses are always safe and always in a good, solid environment. That being said, there's so much that goes into getting a horse ready for a race and getting the horse to be peaking and getting the race to go, and then getting the right post position and all the way through. again, none of that supersedes safety, obviously. But part of it also is that the jockeys have a say in what's going on also. And if they feel like that the racetrack is unsafe, and we see it a lot up here in the north, especially in the colder weather, if they feel like it's uneven or that it's breaking or that the track is just not safe or it's too cold, whatever the reason is, they get together and they cancel, racing like after the first couple races. And that's totally acceptable. Yeah, it's disappointing, but you also want to make sure that everybody, the equine athletes and the jockeys, all come back safely. So, if they're willing to ride the races, then I think that it's management, it's a tough decision for management to make as far as should we cancel when the jockeys are willing to ride. But yeah, that was a tough race to watch. And you go from rooting your horse to win to rooting your horse to come home safely. And that's a really uneasy feeling as an owner.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think like between the jockeys or the management, someone should have stepped in and been like, hey, like this does not look super safe to be racing in right now. Right. Let's do a little delay, see if the weather passes, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's worth discussing in this climate. Mm-hmm. Like obviously you're going to have off tracks, you're going to have sloppy tracks, you're going to have inclement weather, but I don't know. I just adding another like scary variable like that to already like a tumultuous time where we're doing everything we can to keep horses and jockeys safe. Like I said, it made me a little scary. It made me a little scared, but I'm glad everybody came home safe, and we move on to another day at beautiful Gulfstream Park.
Right. Hey Joe, can we talk a little bit about what a weekend gun runner had?
Yeah, I mean it's every weekend, but yeah, we can talk about this weekend.
But this more so than any. I mean, we're just talking about the winner of the Risen Star, which is a grade 2. He had Intricate and Perfect Shot finish second and third in the Rachel Alexandra. He had Recharge and Candy Isle finish 1-2, the Gun Runner Exacta in the Sunland Oaks. Dymatic is one of the favorites for the Rebel this weekend, and Locked. Let's not forget about Locked, who hasn't been seen since November of last year. The Pletcher trained horse is going to be in the Fountain of Youth as well. I mean, it's just everything is coming up Gun Runner. And the reason why I'm bringing it up isn't just because, no shit, Green. Like you rattled off the top stallion in the world, or in the country at least. His progeny. But the other reason why I'm bringing it up is because remember when we had this 100 and whatever mare, 140 mare cap, and everyone was worried about diversification in the genes. Well, here's a perfect example of an outcross that is coming in and dominating our gene pool. Candy Ride and a lot of the female family of Gun Runner is from South America, is Argentinian. And shout out to our fans in Argentina because they breed good horses. Woo! But the point is that like here's a horse that came in and is basically a complete outcross to a majority of the genes that we have here in the United States. And his gene pool now is going to be dominant. Candy Ride is going to be a dominant sire of sires, whether it's between Gun Runner or Trilling Candy, and Candy Ride himself is still relatively young. But there are horses that are coming in that are outside of our gene pool that are making a difference. And to me, that's more of an impact than saying, let's cap and artificially limit the number of mares that a stallion is mated to. So again, I know I get on a soapbox about outcrossing and how important it is, but here's a perfect example. I mean, Gun Runner is taking the industry by storm right now. And I think you can make the case that Indian Charlie did the exact same thing 20 years ago.
Yeah. And I loved Candy Ride. Like he burst on the scene like when I was first following racing, and I'll never forget that Pacific Classic. It's only 4-horse field, but it was basically a big match race between him and Medaglia d'Oro. Right. Medaglia d'Oro was obviously a superstar, and Candy Ride blew him away. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to keep it together and race beyond that. But yeah, like I love that Candy Stripes line, or that Argentinian line, right. Viva Argentina, as always on this show. And yeah, like he's to me like one of the most top 5 most influential stallions of the last 25 years. And Gun Runner is only gonna build upon that legacy. And it's a great point that you make, like introducing some South American blood or some outside blood into the very homogenous pool, the increasingly homogenous pool of stallions and mares that we have mainly in Kentucky.
Right.
That's a big deal. And yeah, Gunrunner he just keeps reaching new heights. It's incredible to watch. Rail Talk is sponsored by TaylorMade. We talked last week about the success of Not This Time, obviously getting to be a global sensation, because I think he's going to have horses all over the place soon in Europe and South America. He's obviously burst onto the scene and had multiple grade 1 winners here in America. But there's another stallion that's gotten kind of a second chance in the stallion shed that went from Coolmore to TaylorMade early voting. And I believe he has some new foals on the ground. John, can you explain that situation?
Yeah. So, Joe, it's really exciting. Again, another son of Gunrunner. It's the Gunrunner show. Early voting, who won the Preakness and then retired over at Coolmore. Got off like gangbusters, got a majority of his mares in fall for the first half of the season, and then tailed off for undisclosed reasons. And ended up giving the horse back to the insurance company and accepting the insurance proceeds on the fact that the horse was not fertile anymore. And Duncan Taylor, through his research, ended up hooking up with a specialist in Australia, I believe, and they figured out what the problem was, and the horse again is off and running, no pun intended, in the breeding shed. The majority of his horses, if not all of them, I think, are pregnant already. And we actually had an early voting fall. Here's some baby pictures of the early voting Peace Lily fall, just born a couple of days ago. Peace Lily is of course, Joe, is the half to Tom's d'Etat. So a rather stoutly bred little bugger there. And I'm just happy for early voting because I was a fan of his in racing, and I'm really happy for TaylorMade, not only because they're a sponsor, but because they do the right things on so many levels at so many aspects of the business. So it's a win-win-win. It's a feel-good story, and I couldn't be happier to include this early voting fall as a DJ Stable graduate.
We were talking about Gunrunner in the last segment, and there was some unfortunate news related to Gunrunner. One of his best daughters, one of his first real superstars on the racetrack, Echo Zulu, was unfortunately euthanized in Southern California on Sunday. Steve Asmussen told the Daily Racing Forum, Steve Anderson, that the filly came cast in her stall. She injured herself when trying to get back on her feet. She was a horse that had some bad luck and some health issues along the way, and was kind of star-crossed in that way. But when she was great, she was awesome. She was one of the best filly and mare sprinters we've ever seen. Obviously, she was great in the juvenile fillies a couple of years ago as well, going 2 turns. But I'll always remember Echo Zulu, and this speaks to I think the collective trauma of that day and that summer last year at Saratoga. She ran the race after New York Thunder broke down in the H. Allen Jerkins. And I honestly thought there was a discussion to be had about whether or not to keep running that card. Obviously, it was the Travers card, so they were going to do everything they could to get in those races. But that was a really devastating moment, especially 3 weeks after Maple Leaf Mel. And I remember her racing in the Ballerina in the next race, and she opened up this clearly in the stretch, and it was just like, please, get home safe, because it was from following that script from New York Thunder and Maple Leaf Mel. So yeah, that's how I'll always remember her. First and foremost, her accomplishments on the racetrack, but also that moment at Saratoga when she was dazzling in the Ballerina and thankfully came home safe.
And Joe, I remember her from even a little bit further back, just by happenstance, because we have some mares with Bill Betts as partner, and Bill was one of the co-breeders of Echo Zulu with some of his investors and partners. And I remember talking to him at the yearling sale. And again, Gunrunner was unknown; it was his first crop, and there was some buzz about it, but people were wondering if they were going to be early juveniles. So people were like, passively optimistic, I guess is the best way of putting it. And Echo Zulu was beautiful and sold for $300,000. Had a really good female family before she even started running. And then just watching her run and develop, and it wasn't even so much that Joe, she won her first 5 races in a row, and other than the 2-turn Fairgrounds Oaks race, she won them by daylight. She won 4, 5, 5.5, 7.5 lengths. It was a sight to be held. And then, ultimately finished her career with 4 grade ones under her belt, champion 2-year-old, had the kind of speed that everyone loved, basically won every race gate to wire. And for us East Coasters, us homers, she was 5 for 5 at New York racetracks. So every time we saw her run locally, she won and won impressively. And that was a group of filly and mare sprinters that were really good. I mean, Goodnight Olive and Juju's Map, and I'm trying to remember some of the other, but like that was a good crop of sprinting fillies. So it wasn't even so much that she was winning and winning big. She was beating up on some good horses, and really the only time she ever lost was going 2 turns in the Kentucky Oaks, and then if I remember correctly, she got beat in the sprint in one of the Breeders' Cup races, right in the sprint. And there's a big field, and she kind of loomed and just kind of didn't get up there, is my recollection. But all the other races, and not that second place in a Breeders' Cup is anything to turn your nose up, but all her other races, she won and won emphatically, and really had a groundswell of fans for multiple reasons. But I always remember her as a yearling and developing, and then just having that kind of brilliant speed that Steve Asmussen is always able to kind of coax out of these horses. And she did it her whole career, her whole 11 race career. The only question I would have is, what was she still doing in California?
Yeah, that was part of the story that I didn't quite understand.
Right.
But yeah, she won 9 times in 11 starts, $2.6 million earner, 8-time graded stakes winner, 4-time grade 1 winner. Her only 2 losses, as John mentioned, was when she was 4th in the Kentucky Oaks and 2nd in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. That's a pretty impeccable resume. So she'll definitely be missed, and I think it's unfortunate not to have her as a great daughter of Gunrunner be part of the gene pool going forward. We mentioned that earlier.
Is she a Hall of Famer? What do you think?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so
It's
too.
borderline. I mean, it's borderline, but yeah, I think that kind of brilliance over 3 seasons, a champion. She did win the Fairgrounds Oaks and the juvenile fillies, so you can't say she was just a sprinter. I think so.
Yeah, I would definitely vote for her. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would think that she should be, her career should be memorialized in the Hall of Fame for sure.
Yep. Just wanted to transition real quick to one other story I wanted to mention. Dan Ross, who does a great job in the TDN covering California racing, he posted a story last week called Computer Assisted Wagering 101 for California Stakeholders. And it's a really interesting look at the CAW wagerers, which we've touched on before on this show, but not really in depth. And it's, if you're not aware, computer assisted wagerers, basically they're these huge wagering groups that have algorithms that they set up that are able to analyze the pools, the win pools in particular, but all the pools, and spot inefficiencies down to basically like the millisecond before the gates open. And, that leads to a lot of the late odds drops that we see that really frustrate bettors. You bet a horse at 7-1 and then the horse wins at 7-2. You feel like a loser, even though you cashed the winning ticket. Racing is the only game where that exists. And I think it's driving some people away, but it's a really interesting look into their effect in California, particularly because California racing does not have the subsidies or the slot and gaming revenue that other states do. California purses are basically entirely subsist on handle and wagering, and part of the issue with computer assisted wagering is they're able, those groups, and or rather the places where they wager, like a place called the Elite Turf Club, where they house all of the big computer assisted wagerers, they're able to negotiate host fees with the track and basically get a cut on the takeout. And then also the players are able to get rebates from the Elite Turf Club and from the ADWs where they're betting. So, I mean, a lot of times you don't even really have to win. You don't even have to show a profit on the wagering side to make money as a computer assisted wagerer because of all the breaks that you're getting in takeout and host fees. And I think that there's an issue too where it's pretty incestuous because, the Elite Turf Club is majority owned by the Stronach Group, which also owns Santa Anita and Golden Gate in California. Naira also owns a portion of the Elite Turf Club. There's other CAW platforms, including Racing and Gaming Services and Velocity, which are owned by Churchill Downs. And it just, I don't know, it adds to this feeling for me as like a regular horse player that it's like the people that are taking my bets And in a lot of cases, allowing these wagerers to come in later than I am able to, or I have access to, they have those wagerers in their house or in their ADWs that they partially or majority own. Like it makes it feel like you're so up against it as a regular wagerer that I don't know. I maybe it wouldn't be better, but I would feel a little bit better if the people that were taking my bets did not also own part of the companies that are housing all of these huge wagerers that are crushing my prices at the last second. That feels off to me. John, what do you think?
Well, again, Joe, you're more savvy on that front than I am. But the bottom line is that we have to have a way to encourage more gamblers to want to bet on our product. And the higher takeout and the situation like this, with the computer groups, is not helping. And it's not only it's not only being noticed by the average bettor, but there's so many other options now for wagering that people don't need. If they want to bet, they don't need horse racing anymore. So we can't be under the same model that we've been in the past, especially in places like California and New York and Florida, where literally there are dozens of other options, whether it be casinos or online gaming, or anything in between. Sports betting, exactly. So the day and age of us being a standalone option and dominating that field is way in our rearview mirror. I don't know what the answer is. Greater minds than mine would be able to have to figure that out. But I think, Joe, the other option is we need to have more investment, more play options, more betting options. Whether it's I'm going to bet on Echo Zulu in the fifth and the Celtics to have score more than 120 points, parlays, things like that. Because my understanding, again, I'm a novice at that, but my understanding is that these parlay bets are basically the sucker bets that people lose all the time. They think, oh, okay, I can pick two things in a row, and they lose, and that's where the casinos make the majority of money. So I don't know if that's a direction that we need to go in. Does that happen in other sports also, Joe, where these large wagering groups are able to come in at literally the last millisecond?
No.
Okay.
And I mean, part of the difference too is that the liquidity is so much greater in the sports pools. Like the amount of money it would take to move the Super Bowl line is a lot greater than the amount of money it takes to move interest in the win pool at Aqueduct on a Thursday.
Right.
So that's the issue too, is that there's not enough other people betting. And that's the other, turn that this conversation can take, is that there reaches a certain point where the CAW wagers are enough of the pools that they cannibalize each other and they lose the edge. Right. So if you chased away the regular bettors that are sick of getting screwed by the guys with the algorithms that have access to the pool data later than you do, then it becomes just the CAW wagers. They're going to go away because they're going to lose their edge if they're just basically playing against each other and not against the minnows like me. Right. So then where are you left? And Pat Cummings has warned about this a bunch, about how the handle numbers look on the surface okay. Like handle is pretty steady in America, but the percentage of CAW money in those numbers is increasing. And the percentage of regular meat and potatoes horse players is decreasing. That reaches a tipping point, I think, at some juncture where you just don't have enough customers to sustain the product. And to me, that's the nightmare scenario here. And I just, like I said, when Naira and the Stronach Group and these other companies own the racetracks and own the ADWs that the regular players are betting in and own these offshore betting parlors where the big whales are betting, it just is, there's no incentive to me for them really to scale back or to restrict the CAW wagerers. Right. I mean, Naira has done it in certain pools, which I appreciate, but when they're getting a percentage of all of those bets, like what, they have no incentive to defend and protect the smaller horse player. So it's a problem. Rail Talk is sponsored by the Green Group. We're less than 2 months away from tax day, and the Green Group is the #1 accounting firm in the horse business. As you know, if you watch this show, there's one reason no other CPA firm knows the horse industry like they do. Len's got over 200 horses. DJ Stables won over 2,500 races, probably getting close to 2,600 at this point. Green Group's got over 800 clients because they make the money, save them taxes, and they got a special offer for listeners of Rail Talk. Len is offering a complimentary, confidential half-hour consultation, guaranteeing you'll get value. Hit him up, 732-634-5100. Do it before tax day. He'll prove to you that he'll save you taxes. He guarantees it. He unequivocally guarantees he'll find value and savings. He'll donate to your favorite charity or whatever you want. He's not worried. He's found value before. He knows he can do it with you. And really, a chat with Len is not just about the tax savings. The dude is a fount of knowledge when it comes to business, when it comes to horse racing, when it comes to accounting. Obviously, he's written several books. He's a great guy to just sit near and soak up the knowledge from. Shout out to Len and the Green Group. Hit him up, greenco.com, 732-634-5100. Get that confidential, complimentary, free half-hour consultation. We're so thrilled to bring on this next guest to the Rail Talk studio. He's the general manager of Ocala Stud, David O'Farrell. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, guys. Looking forward to it.
So great to have you. And it's you are at the helm of such an interesting company, I think, in the racing and breeding world, because Ocala Stud has really carved out a great niche in Florida as both a stallion station, as a consigner. I mean, you guys kind of do it all a little bit, and it's a family business. And can you just tell us a little bit about what's made Ocala Stud be able to stand out in the Florida racing and breeding environment?
Well, we just love the industry to begin with. I mean, it's our passion. It's what we do. I mean, I don't know anything else. I was born into this. I'm third generation. My grandfather moved here from Maryland in 1956 and, grew the farm to national prominence pretty quickly. The first Florida bred Kentucky Derby winner, was won the year that we moved to Florida. Needles won in 56. He was actually born on this farm when it was Dickey Stables prior to. And then 5 years later, Carrie Back, who was born, raised, and trained at Ocala Stud, won the Derby in 61. So in 5 years, you had two Derby winners come out of Florida. That'd be like Georgia having two Derby winners in 5 years right now. It was unheard of. There wasn't a big horse population, and it was a big deal. And so the farm kind of grew, and the O'Farrells and our crew grew with it. And we've just been fortunate to be able to withstand the test of time. And, it's a lot of work, but it's a family operation, and we love what we do.
And you mentioned a couple of Florida breds that have won the Derby, and now it looks like that you guys have a hand in quite a few Derby and Oaks prospects. You want to just kind of walk us through how Ocala Stud has been involved with some of these horses?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really good here lately. We have really good clients that send us really nice horses, and that's, first and foremost. We have a homebred that my brother and I own a piece of the mare that has been really good to us. We bred the mare to be a 2-year-old, and she didn't quite make the cut, and her name was the Shady Lady. So she didn't make a 2-year-old sale. We retained her for a brood mare. Next thing you know, we bred her to our stallion, Awesome Slew, and we got a smashing 2-year-old colt named Hades that we sold to DJ Stable, and he just won the Holy Bull and beat the 2-year-old champion. So we're super excited about him, and we think Hades has a bright future. We've been fortunate. We've had a few others. We had Fierceness at the farm last year. We had Locked, who won the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland, and he's pointing to his next start in the Fountain of Youth. He's a serious contender. Agate Road is another one that graduated here last year. He ran a game second in the Sam Davis last week, and he's an exciting horse. He was kind of pegged a turf horse early on, but he's bred for the dirt, and he's bred to run all day long. So he's exciting. And then there's a couple of others that could sneak in the picture. Born Noble has a ton of talent, went off heavily favored last weekend at Gulfstream and just came up short, but he's a horse with immense potential.
Yeah, no, we're definitely excited about him. We got a tiny piece of him at West Point, so can't wait to see what he does the rest of the year. John, we made it about you for a little bit, so I got to bring it back to me eventually. But no, I mean, just looking at the stallion roster you guys have, it's a pretty good roster, especially with Awesome Slew has been a great value sire. Adios Charlie obviously has had success in the Florida bred program for years. You got Colonel Liam, who obviously was a multiple grade 1 winner on turf. 2-part question. first, what is the scouting process like for you guys when you decide which stallions to go after? And then secondly, they're all like very reasonably priced. I think the most expensive one on the Stallion roster is Roadster at $7,500. How do you go about pricing those horses after you secure them as a stallion?
Well, our philosophy as far as bringing in new stallions, it's tough to compete in that space. It's hard for us to go after the Sons of Into Mischief, the Sons of Curlin, Warfront, so on and so forth. So we have to kind of think outside the box. My family's had a long history of making stallions. And we do it sometimes by bringing in horses that are maybe by less than fashionable stallions. We either get a really good racehorse that's a little weak on pedigree, or a really good, really well-bred horse that maybe is a little light on race record that maybe had some potential. But it's hard for us to compete for the full package. So we've been successful with sires that are maybe by less than fashionable horses. We stood a horse named Trippy, who was by Insweep. He was a great stallion for us. We had Montbrook, who was by Buckaroo. We had Notebook, who was kind of an old stalwart Florida stallion. He was by Well Decorated. Cantheros was by Lionheart. Gervin was by Tale of a Cotty. So we take shots on horses like Win Win Win, who are by Hat Trick. Or we take shots on horses, that maybe have a little something different in their pedigree, but they had a lot of ability. Win 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 was a very talented racehorse. He was very fast. He's got 3 Derby winners up close in his pedigree, so there's no reason why he can't be a good sire.
And aside from the good racehorses, it looks like you're also picking up stallions that have multiple surface ability as well. Gretzky the Great, Colonel Liam, obviously turf. Is that part of the equation as well? Do you see that more and more racetracks are going to multiple surfaces, and you want to try to get on top of it?
Yeah, no question. You have to be versatile in today's world. I think you've got to have horses that can do both. I mean, if you have a great dirt stallion, that's all well and good, but most of these horses are going to run over different surfaces, or, there's just more opportunities for turf and even synthetic now coming back into play. So I think you have to have a horse that can fare well on any surface.
David, just as a quick follow-up also, sorry, Joe, with Gervin, who obviously, was at your farm for a number of years and graduated in essence and went to Kentucky. Is that ultimately your goal for these stallions, is to hopefully have them be good enough where they're going to, move up to Kentucky and stand for more money? Or are you guys better off having the horses stay with you and just pumping out as many, really good Florida breds as possible?
Well, as much as we'd love to have the stallion stay here in Florida, we just understand the economics of the business. And, we'd love to be able to keep a top-notch stallion here in Florida. But the truth of the matter is, we just can't support right here today, a $30,000 stallion. Maybe we can get there again. But, I've kind of assumed the role. We'd gladly be the stepping stone. We'd love to get the opportunity to get another horse off to a great start in their career. And, if they go to Kentucky, then that means we've done our job. And, I had an owner that asked me that very question. He said, will you be upset if we move them to Kentucky? I said, no, that's our job. That means we've succeeded. So, that's kind of where we are. And, I think it's a great place to start stallions, we've been pretty successful at it.
I wanted to shift gears a little bit to the 2-year-old sales, because you guys have a consignment coming up at the OBS March sale. You guys have been doing this for a long time, going to those sales. The sales have developed some parts for the better, some parts for the worse over the years. I think some of the newer regulations, like getting rid of clenbuterol and cracking down on corrective surgeries, I think is a positive thing for the horses long term. But you're a veteran of the 2-year-old sales. How have you seen them develop, either for better or for worse, over your time going to them?
Yeah, the 2-year-old sales are our livelihood. My grandfather, he was the first one to hold a 2-year-old sale. When he moved and bought the farm in '56, we had a racetrack, and he had inferior bred horses to Kentucky. So he knew he couldn't market them as yearlings and make any money. So we all know that horses outrun their pedigree at times. So he put the training into them, convinced the track owner at Hiley to let him put up a tent, and he sold 2-year-olds in training. And that's how it all started. Wow. And so we've been doing it ever since. We sell our entire crop at the 2-year-old sales. We breed. We don't pin hook. We breed and carry them all the way. So it's a 3-year investment. And we've seen the process evolve over the years, but there's been no faster segment of the marketplace that's grown as quickly as 2-year-old sales. And a big part of that is because the runners have come out of it.
And I know just from being on a couple of boards with you, we're very proud of the fact that OBS is such a safe surface, and that the horses have graduated and gone on to it. That is tactically important, Joe, for us as a company and also as an industry. And David's been a big part of going through and making sure that we have some of these safety protocols in place. Do you just want to touch on a couple of the protocols that we have in place, David?
Yeah, I think we're a leader in medication now. I mean, we've really gotten on board and aligned ourselves with what the protocols are at the races and also the track. I mean, we have the safest track, I believe, in America. It's unbelievable. I mean, for what we do, we get a lot of spring showers and heavy rains. And, if you have inclement weather and you don't have the luxury of moving your breeze show to another day and you have to breeze over less than ideal conditions, we have a track that can handle just about any type of weather event. And it's just very kind to the horses. For what we do, I'm a big believer and proud of our racetrack. And the horses go on and they win dirt races all over the world. So, it's been good to us, and I think it's an asset to OBS.
And just to piggyback on that, are there any improvements that you would like to see on the 2-year-old sales over time, whether it's, less of an emphasis on going 9-4 or 9-3? Like, is there something that you think we could be doing better at the 2-year-old sales?
Well, I think we always need to be looking for rooms, for areas that we can improve upon. I mean, it is kind of madness. We always seem to get faster and faster and faster. And, it just, when racehorse times stay the same over the course of history. I mean, our old stallion that came to the farm from Maryland, rough and tumble, is a sire of Dr. Fager, who still holds the world record mile, and horses at the track still can't beat it, but we can keep beating our best times at the 2-year-old sales. Horses are working 20-2 now, so it's interesting, but, I think the runners are continuing to come out of the 2-year-old sales. We broke down the stats over a 10-year period, and we actually 2-year-old sales have the highest percentage of winners to starters amongst every other segment of the marketplace. So the runners are coming out of the 2-year-old sales, and we just have to continue to improve upon safety and keep those measures in place and just try to get better.
And with regard to the 2-year-old sales, David, you have a mixed bag of horses coming into this March sale, especially. You have some homebreds, like you mentioned, that are being keyed and pointed for the March and April sales, and then you also have a few horses, 10 or 11 horses from the Lodenbach dispersal. How did that all come into play? And are there some specific horses within the consignment that people should be looking at with the Breeze Show coming up and the sale in the next couple of weeks?
So we usually carry about 10 to 12 to the March sale. We treat it like the select sale that it used to be. I think you have to bring a very forward horse, something that can appeal to the select type buyers. And so, we still kind of treat it as such. We've got a couple of win-win-wins. First crop 2-year-old sire this year. 2 fillies that have been working very well. Got a lot of high hopes for them. One's out of a young Into Mischief mare named Ganau, and she's really fast, very athletic. Very excited about her. We have an awesome slew filly out of a young Nyquist mare that I really like, doing very well. And we're selling one for a client, colt by Matoli out of Zooming By, that's really fast. He's very athletic, doing extremely well right now. We had some of the Lodenbach dispersal horses that kind of fell in our lap at the last minute. They made deadline, and there's 40 some odd horses in the sale, split up amongst 4 consigners, and we were fortunate enough to be one of those operations that were able to take these horses. And I haven't seen them yet, but they're going to ship directly into OBS. Chad Stewart, who's been training them all along, does a great job. I've been in communication with him, and we're going to get all of our heads together, the 4 consigners, and try to make it as uniform as possible, and try to synchronize what we're going to do as far as presenting them for the Breeze Show.
Well, David, we really appreciate the time. I got to say, I've admired you guys from afar in this industry for a while. So I really appreciated getting to know you and getting to know the business a little bit more. So appreciate you coming on, David.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Yeah. And also best of luck with all the Derby horses. Like,
thank you very much.
A lot of action. You got a lot of action coming up.
Did you get a new suit yet? Did you go to the tailor and make sure you got a Derby suit?
Not yet. I don't want to jinx it.
John's already printing up T-shirts, so if that doesn't jinx it,
that's right. You're getting yours is en route, by the way. So actually, on the back, it says owner, trainer, and also the breeders as well. So
yep. Perfect.
So you're on there as a Okala Stud breeder and an OBS graduate, both.
Well, we have a full brother to Haiti selling at OBS April, so just around the corner.
Wow.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's great. That's great.
Nice don't tell anybody. Update.
Don't tell anybody else. We want to have dibs.
All right, so that's going to do it for episode 28 of Rail Talk. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks to David O'Farrell for stopping by. Appreciate you, as always, and learning more about Okala Stud. Keep up the great work that you guys are doing. Thanks to our producer, Patty Wolf. Our associate producers, Anthony LaRocca, Aaliyah LaRocca, and Nathan Wilkinson. Shout out to the sponsors. And make sure to go subscribe on YouTube. Go to railtalkmedia.com. Put your email in. Put your friends, your family's email in. They'll never notice. We're doing a big subscriber drive as we speak right now. So appreciate all the fans for tuning in, watching, and listening. We'll see you back here next week on Rail Talk.